Hi, this is Munson with Munson Music. I'm going to talk a little bit about blue bossa and kind of one of these awesome jazz standards. And randomly, I'm kind of working off of how this was taught to me. So it's all about passing it on, because there's a million ways to kind of approach a standard, especially a standard like this or any other jazz standard. And this is kind of a traditional bossa nova. We're kind of starting off walking through the changes really quick, kind of a C minor 9. And then from the C minor 9, I'm using an F minor 9. And then from the F minor 9, I'm using a D half diminished 7. And then I'm using a G7 with a flat 13, which is kind of a cool sound. And then from the G7 with a flat 13, I'm going back to the C minor chord. It's kind of our A part of our first section. And then from there we go to E flat minor. Then we go to an A flat 7 or A flat 13. Which you might even want to make an A flat or an A flat 7 with a flat 13. That's a crazy chord. And then using a D flat major 6/9 or a D flat major 13. And then going back to the D half diminished to the G7 with a flat 13. Back to the C minor 9. And then kind of working a little turnaround where you may want to hit the D half diminished. G7 with a flat 13. Back to C minor 9. Now, if those are a bunch of crazy chords to you, jazz rules dictate that C minors and C minor 9s could be played as just C minor chords. F could be an F minor. D half diminished, I really like that voicing. You should really kind of work on that voicing. Another way to do that, let's see, half diminished 7, position when kind of your D half diminished 7 is kind of a mini bar over the E, B, and G. And then the G, if you see a G7, you could always play a G major. Randomly, a little bit happier sound, but that definitely works. Even a G major bar, if you wanted to kind of go work a G7, that's cool too. I'm kind of jazzing it up a little bit. The C minor 9. Then the E flat's actually kind of like a 2-5-1. Actually, if you're familiar with that progression, kind of E flat minor. It's kind of the 2 chord. A flat 7 as the 5 chord, going to the D flat major. It's kind of a 2-5-1 in the key of D flat major. So they actually change keys in this tune. Actually, we start off in the key of C minor, end up going to the key of D flat major. Then we go back to our D half diminished 7. Right, the G is kind of our 5 chord, 2-5-1. Back to the C minor, 2-5 is a turnaround at the end. So this is very cool progression-wise. Actually, we start in C minor on the 1 chord. And I'm doing kind of this cool little bossa thing. You've got a lot of bass notes. Actually, I'm following root notes for the chord. The note that is the chord, actually, C minor. You're looking for a C note as the bass note. So I'm taking the A string 3rd fret with a thumb and taking my index middle ring and kind of lining them up on the D, G, and B. Actually, there's lots of ways to do this. You can work pick ideas and strumming ideas around this too. But you kind of start off, the basic groove is kind of the thumb and then index and middle ring together twice. So it's kind of thumb, fingers, fingers. And it's almost like a 16th, 8th, 16th rhythm. So kind of 16th, 8th, 16th, 16th, 8th, 8th. So kind of that first finger note is slightly longer than the rest. And what can be very cool is to alternate between the root of the chord, that A string 3rd fret, to the low E string 3rd fret. I'm moving my 2nd finger to do that. So I'm kind of going from the root on the A string 3rd to the low E 3rd, root 5th, root 5th, kind of alternating. You can try that hybrid picking too. Actually, this tune actually was taught to me by Robert Newton, and at the time it was more about hybrid picking, so I was getting used to my pick and then using my fingers to kind of play the rest of the chords. So you could do it that way too. And then for the F minor 9, you actually be following that same figure, kind of the A string 8th to the low E 8th for the root 5th. On the D half diminished, you'd be doing the A string 5th fret to the low E string on the 4th fret, because it's actually a flat 5 for that chord. So this is a little weird. You're going A string 5th to the low E 4th to kind of cover that root 5th, root 5th. And on the G7 with a flat 13, I'm actually not even worrying about that. I'm just kind of doing the root both times. So we kind of dig on that. And then back to the C minor 9. And then when I get to the E flat, I'm actually doing that same figure. Got kind of an E flat minor. minor 9 with the root on the A6th, low E6th. And then for the A flat, I love this change. This is a cool little Robert-ism. Is working an A flat with a major 6, A flat 7 with third, or A flat 13, and then making a change to an A flat with a flat 13 to lead into the D major 6/9. Now I've got A string 4th fret for the root, moving my second finger to the low E4th for the 5th, and then we're back to the D half diminished with the root flat 5. Pause it and practice. Just pause and practice. All right, and then we'd be going to the A flat with the or G7 with flat 13. We're kind of working just that root chord, root chord, and then back to the C minor 9. And if you wanted to, on the end, you could kind of do that D half diminished root chord, and then G7 with a flat 13 chord, almost like a halving idea. Kind of threw it that way. Now, something else we'll add to this too. Actually, there's a couple things you could add to this. But there are lots of things to do, multiple possibilities. But through that whole form, you got the C minor, another C minor, F minor, another F minor, and then the D half diminished, flat 5, the G7, C minor, more C minor, we got E flat minor, A flat 7, D flat major 13, or D flat, D half diminished, G7 with a flat 13, C minor, and then D half diminished 7, G7 with a flat 13, back to C minor. Now the weird part is in a bossa, on the last 16th, you try and anticipate the next chord. This is a weird, crazy, cool thing. But on the C minor 9, when you're going root, chord, root, chord, that last finger hit is the last 16th. So when you make the change to the F minor, on that last 16th, you want to try and hit the chord before you start the chord actually on the root. So this is a little weird. It's almost like from the C minor, root, chord, 5th chord, root, chord, 5th chord, new chord, into the root, 5th, root, 5th, new chord, root, flat 5, new chord, root, and then new chord. So it's all about anticipating the next chord by a 16th note. The way that we're feeling. I guess you could feel it like an 8th, depending on how you're dividing this beat. But I'm almost feeling it like a 16th. Root, chord, root, chord, new chord, root, chord, flat 5, new chord, root, chord, root, chord, new chord, root, chord, 5th chord, new chord, new chord. So that's a little weird. That's C minor. Oh, and actually to kick it off, Robert used to do this. It's kind of all together, kind of together fingers to kind of start if you wanted to use that. F minor, D half diminished, G7, C minor, E flat, A flat, flat 13, D flat, D half diminished, G7 flat 13, C minor 9, D half diminished. Oh, I did a little bass move there. Which if you want to steal that, steal it. C minor, F minor, D half diminished, G7 flat 13, C minor, E flat, A flat, D flat, D half diminished, G7 flat 13, C minor, turn around. I kind of missed that, but I kind of dig on those licks. Now the main head of the song actually is this beautiful melody, and hopefully you've got some tab on the screen to kind of follow this. flat, D, C, and then B flat, A flat, G, F, E flat, D flat, C, B flat, A flat, and then G flat, F, B flat, F, A flat, G, B flat, A flat, G, B flat, A flat, G. Beautiful melody. And this is kind of coming out of a C minor scale, actually. That whole 2-5-1 in the beginning kind of sets us up for a C minor group. So you can even use a C minor stretch pattern to kind of solo over the scale. Kind of an Aeolian mode. Or if you wanted to, you could kind of alter that into a C harmonic minor scale. If you know pentatonic scales, you can even use C minor pentatonic if you're looking for a really easy scale to kind of work through it. And then when that change happens to the E flat, to the A flat, to the D flat major, through that whole section you may want to switch over to a D flat major scale. So you have D flat on the 9th fret on the low E string. You can work your stretch pattern for your major scale, or work it with visual systems anywhere you wanted to on the neck, or that scale. There's a million other ways to play that scale. And then when we get to that D half diminished 7, all of a sudden we're back in the key of C minor. So you can kind of alternate between the keys. So this can be a little weird. One way to kind of get used to making that change, actually, especially if you're already used to playing some lead over the top of chords, is you can play the chord. This is something called freeform, actually, that Robert talked about with me. So you can play the chord and then do a lick around the chord, and then play the next chord. Make up a lick in the scale, chord, scale, chord, scale, chord, scale. We could go to the E flat and make the change. So E flat minor, now I'm in D flat major, and then A flat, and B flat, and then back to the D half diminished, back to C minor. Just taking as much time as you wanted to with each chord, and then to make up stuff in the scale. Playing the chords in other places even. Pretty intense lesson. Actually, you got some good bossa nova rhythm stuff to kind of play around with. Got kind of that main melody, right? Ba da 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 da, ba da da da, ba da 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 da, ba da da da, ba da 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 da, ba da 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 da, ba da 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 da. Or something else, actually, what I'm doing right now is something called scatting, right? right? I'm using my voice to create musical melodies over the top of that progression. That can be very, very cool too. So, and this can be very challenging too. But even just making up stuff over the top of the chords as you're holding it down. I know I just went crazy fast on that, but that might be something else you want to kind of experiment. You can take it really, really slow. Actually, the best guitar licks in the world at some point got played very, very slow and meticulously, exactly the way that somebody wanted to pull them off fast. And it's really all about relaxed practice with that kind of thing. So some of this seems really crazy. So you just take your time, go back and kind of look at each chord. And actually, some of these voicings are just beautiful by themselves. You can just explore just that C minor 9, or even taking little arpeggios of the chord as the basis for your soloing. Some stuff around those chords. To kind of say with your instrument. But that's the basics of how you could kind of play around with blue bossa. I know this is a pretty intense lesson, but best of luck!